Play it! Yeah, you all knew this was coming when I announced that I was going to review kids-related stuff. So, fuck it. We're doing this now. But, before we continue, I feel I have to again remind a lot of people of one simple fact. And I can't believe I actually have to say this anymore, but I guess I have to say it because it needs saying. Just because a movie isn't made for me doesn't mean that it's garbage. Bob the Builder, My Little Pony, or even Fred Penner back in the day are all good shows despite the fact that I'm not 7 anymore. And you don't have to be fucking 5 to know that this and this are stinking piles of shit. In the immortal words of a psychopathic murderer who butchers women, I'm gonna give this movie a decent review and analysis. I'll point out anything good if I find it. So, with all that said, let's take a look at Prinzessin Lillifee. Because I like to torture myself. Similar to Little Polar Bear, Princess Lillifee is a German franchise centered around the titular Princess Lillifee, who, together with her friends, lives in the fictional kingdom of Rosaria, dubbed Pinkovia in the English version. There are the books, the movies, a TV series, and a whole load of other merchandise, all held in the already ugly tone of pink. In fact, there is so much merchandise, I was originally going to review the sequel, seeing how it actually has a distinct title instead of the generic Princess Lillifee. However, one fine winter day, I was fortunate enough to come across a Lillifee double feature when walking through the entertainment section of my nearest Müller. And, being the creepy fucker that I am, I bought this, along with another girly flick that we're going to take a look at in this lineup of children's films. Thank you, Müller. So the film begins with nothing happening in the first 15 minutes. I'm serious. Nothing plot-related actually happens in the first 15 minutes. What happens instead? Our lead character, Princess Lillifee, voiced by Marisa Sedlmayr, being a complete cunt to everyone in the kingdom of Rosaria. Now, you may think I'm exaggerating, but in a few moments, I will give you evidence for everything that I just said. But before that, we have to meet Lillifee's friends. A hedgehog named Ivan, 2 twin mice named Cindy and Clara, and Spanky Ham. You think I'm kidding about that? Nope. This character's actual name is Poopsie, and he is a kid version of the drawn-together character. I mean, take these screenshots from this scene, for example, where he's supposed to bring a plate of pancakes to Lillifee, but ends up eating the entire plate in the process. And did I mention that this character's name literally translates to farty? Another weird thing I found out in this movie is that the 2 mice are both female. When looking at the 2 for the first time, I swore that one of them must be a boy, judging by that sailor's outfit. It wasn't until the sailor mouse was actually addressed as a she when I was like, okay, wait a minute. That's a girl? Anyway, as said, for the first 15 minutes of the movie, our lead is a complete douchebag to everyone in Rosaria by turning everything pink for no reason and destroying other people's property. So at a gathering, all the trolls, elves, and mermaids conclude that our lead and all of the other fairies are completely useless. Unfortunately for them, our lead eavesdrops on them and, of course, gets caught thanks to Spanky. And yes, I am going to call him that throughout this review. Needless to say, everyone tells our lead that they don't want fairies in Rosaria anymore and decide to leave the kingdom for a place called Bluetopia. Of course, Lillifee promises to fix all that and, all that stuff, to which the leader of the gathering tells her that she has until the next full moon to convince everyone, or else the fairies will take part in an unscheduled photo shoot. Okay, he doesn't actually say that, but what he does say is that the gathering's decision to leave will be final. Hence, our lead goes to visit the other fairies of Rosaria. There is Firebender Fairy, voiced by Max Felder, Icebender Fairy, voiced by Patrick Roche, Airbender Fairy, voiced by Barbie Schiller, Cookie Fairy, voiced by Andrea Wick, Emo Fairy, voiced by Sabine Bohlmann, Lucky Fairy, voiced by Angela Wiederhuth, and Nerdy Fairy, voiced by Dominic Redl. Lillifee talks to them about her problem, but via song, the other fairies tell her that they have problems of their own to worry about. Case in point, Cookie Fairy. Due to her soot-filled chimney, she can't bake any good muffins anymore, and all the muffins she does make turn out to be dark and charred. Lillifee thus decides to clean the chimney with the aid of Ivan and Airbender Fairy. And how well did that go? Needless to say, it turns into a complete clusterfuck when Airbender Fairy overuses her wind powers and spreads the entire soot all over the fairies' village. Just like the 2016 election for the Democrats. Back at our castle, Lillifee and her friends discuss what can be done to convince the fairies and to save Rosaria. One of the mice then remarks that the only time the fairies actually did work together, instead of constantly bickering with one another, was when they were singing about their problems. Which prompts our lead to have the most asinine idea ever. Her plan to fix everything? A musical, of course. And yes, that is just as retarded as it sounds. And I'm not the only one. Even her friends think this idea is completely stupid. And even the fairies think this idea is stupid, and they completely reject the idea when Lillifee tells them that the musical won't have a leading role per se. So she's trying to make some artsy art house production? Such rejection doesn't go over well with our lead, and being a fairy, her emotions are apparently tied to her powers when we see her usual pink flowers turn into thorns and moths. So, can that only happen to her? Is that normal among fairies? When the lucky fairy gets depressed, does she run out of luck? And what happens to the emo fairy? Does she get even more depressed? A lot of questions, sure. And none of them will be answered in this movie. Depressed, Lillifee seeks out the help of another friend of hers, Carlos the Frog, who has a Spanish name but speaks in a French accent. What? Lillifee talks about simply leaving Rosaria. However, Carlos restores her confidence by telling her that there is always hope. And since this is a kids' film, she swayed easier than your average AFD supporter. With her newly found confidence, Lillifee decides to get the other fairies motivated in partaking in the musical together. And how do you think she manages to pull this off? By straight up lying to them. I am not joking. Her strategy is to practice with each of the fairies individually and not telling them they're going to perform as one. Cut to the big premiere night when the residents of Rosaria come back to be convinced by the fairies, which immediately raises two questions. First, they weren't told about the musical by Lillifee, so how do the residents know this even happens? And secondly, considering all the stuff she pulled before the premiere, are the fairies going to have a reaction to this? Well, the answer to the first question is we're not. And the answer to the second question is fuck and yes. Before the musical even begins, Lillifee's charade falls apart when all the fairies show up on stage and immediately start bickering again. Lillifee tries to convince them anyway, but they don't listen to her. This is what happens when you lie your fucking face off and people eventually find out. Since even the residents of Rosaria are now leaving, Lillifee tries to save the show by running it herself. At first, everything works fine, but since her emotions are tied to her use of magic, the pink butterflies she conjures again turn into ugly dark moths and start attacking the audience. At least they get a 4D experience out of this. The fairies, undoubtedly, notice this, and since they're not complete asshats, they finally decide to work together and help Lillifee out. Long story short, the musical takes on its intended form, and using their powers in the right way and by working together, the fairies all convince the audience with the help of kid movie simplicity. So this was the pink, girly, all-around quirk, Prinzessin Lillifee. And I can't believe that I actually have to say this, but if you happen to be a girl from the ages of 3 to possibly 7, you will get your money's, or to be more accurate, your parents' money's worth. You have pretty much all the characters from the books and the series, and everything is in pretty pink. The animation is fluent, the colors are bright, and there is, in fact, a good moral lesson to be learned here. Don't lie your filthy ass off. Alright, more accurately, the film does a good job at teaching the simple fact that lying can have consequences, and thus the importance of friendship and honesty. The only real gripe I have with this film is its simple solution to what is, at least within the universe of this film, a very real and serious threat. But even that complaint is minor, considering that the target audience is girls from the ages of 3 to possibly 7. And what 5-year-old girl is gonna question the politics of a fictional universe? So, all in all, if you happen to have a little girl from the ages of 3 to probably 7, this film is actually pretty decent. This was Das German Kritic, and in the next review, we're going to take a look at another famous children's book, and in the next review, the next movie review, it's gonna get pink and girly again, but not like this one.